Every month, supporters at the $5 level get to ask me a question to be answered publicly, and April is no different. If you'd like to ask a question for the month of May, just sign up on Patreon or Subscribestar at the $5 level, and you can easily get there by going to donate.bogosity.tv and using the links, and you can also make a one-time donation with PayPal or just about any cryptocurrency imaginable. You can also install the BitTube extension and generate support for this channel and get a little crypto for yourself just by watching. Alright, let's get to it. Pierre on Subscribestar asks, I am a layman who has heard the global temperatures are rising due to human activity. Each source telling me about this issue has their own solution for the problem, and many of them I don't agree with. However, nearly all of them claim that their solution is the only option, and time cannot be wasted, or else we're all doomed. I am skeptical of these claims, but I have next to no knowledge about climate science to evaluate these claims. My question is, what resources would you recommend I and other laymen use to educate myself on the science surrounding climate change and tell the difference between fact-based problem solving and fear-based propaganda? The best single source I know of for information on global warming, as well as other subjects, is Potholer54. He has the most level-headed, science-based analysis of this that I've seen. So check out all of his videos, they're really good. Over on Patreon, Josh Havens asks, which of these would be the case in Ancapistan? The right to take photographs, or the right not to be photographed, privacy? Remember, it's all about the right to property. So the question is, whose property are you on? If you're on someone else's property, they have the right to set up security cameras or photograph activities that are going on or whatever. You can't stop them from engaging in that action on their own property. But you can stop someone else from photographing you on your property, so it's all about whose property it is. Thomas Urbanski asks, what are your thoughts on consequentialist libertarianism? Well, it's not really libertarianism, is it? Libertarianism is a philosophy based on the non-aggression principle, which is the idea that it's never right to initiate force against another. But consequentialism is about the beneficial results of the action, regardless of whether force is used to obtain them. So consequentialist libertarians sometimes get behind things like eminent domain as long as it creates the greatest benefit. But there's a self-contradiction here. How do you determine what consequences are good and what consequences are bad? If you don't have a valid set of deontological ethics to work from, then how are you going to measure good or bad consequences? This smacks of positivism to me. Value is subjective, and utility is not only personal, but changes based on the situation you're in. So either you're going to go full-on authoritarian and set up a system of completely arbitrary values, or you'll have to fall back onto deontological ethics. You can't go solely from consequences because you need a way to judge the consequences. Not that there's no place for soft consequentialism, and I mean that in the sense that it's the results of an action that matter and not the intention. That's perfectly valid. Deontology can't exist without any regard for consequences, but any initiation of force taken as part of that action is a consequence as well. And again, there needs to be some way of determining whether or not that's justified. And I've shown several times that it just can't ever be, because whatever situation you set up, you end up running afoul of the consistency principle. The non-aggression principle is the only one that's justified because it's the only one that lets people decide for themselves what they value and how much they're willing to risk or give up for it. Sean Pierre asks, what are your thoughts on Hoppean libertarianism? Hoppe always seemed to me to be more of a conservative than a libertarian. He has some ideas that are good and consistent with libertarian thought, but he has others that go way off the mark into initiations of force against peaceful people, which of course libertarianism rejects as indefensible. The big problem with Hoppe is his nationalistic tendencies. He takes the valid concept of property rights on one's home and tries to apply them to a nation. So if you don't like someone being in your home or your business or whatever property we're talking about, you can throw them out. And you can throw them out for bogus reasons like being a homosexual. But Hoppe's idea that a libertarian society could kick someone out of the entire area just for disagreeing with libertarian principles is ridiculous. If there's one person in that society who invites this person onto their own property, then no one else has the right to kick him out. You could expel that person if and only if every single property owner agrees to it. And I mean unanimously. He's taking the verbiage of private property, but applying it to collectivist action. Same with his views on immigration. He treats a national border the same as a private property boundary, and it just isn't. I've gone over this several times. If I live on the American side of the Mexican border, and my neighbor Jose lives on the Mexican side, and I invite him over to my home for a barbecue, he's going straight from his property or mine. But the idea of a national border means that some collective gets to swoop in and stop him. Immigrants, even illegal immigrants, only get to stay in this country because they can find people who voluntarily hire them to do jobs and voluntarily rent houses and apartments to them. Immigration restrictions violate private property and aggressively inhibit peaceful voluntary interactions. They can never be justified. And finally, Pipsqueak asks, what do you think market booms and busts would look like in a truly laissez-faire market? Personally, I think there would be far more than we have now, but the majority wouldn't have an impact on normal activity, as only the state has the power to affect the market on such a scale as we see today. I don't think you'd have big economy-wide booms and busts like we have today. You'd probably have smaller busts in an industry since too many resources get allocated to it and the market has to adjust. But that bust in that one industry would be accompanied by booms in other industries. And even today, it's hard to find any real example of a general glut. You have healthier sectors that aren't allowed to grow because the government is trying to fix the one that's failing, which is exactly the opposite of what needs to happen. So thanks everyone. If you like this, please hit like, subscribe, and the bell. And if you'd like to ask a question, just become a supporter at the $5 level. Links are below or at donate.bogosity.tv. And in addition to Patreon or Subscribestar, you can make a one-time donation via PayPal or crypto, or for free by installing the Airtime extension. Until next time, stay strong and be free.